Hello and welcome everybody, my name is Ron, and today we're going to be answering the question, can you beat Plants vs. Zombies without any sun producers? So this is no sunflowers, and this is also no sun shrooms. Recently I felt like it would be really fun to play through Plants vs. Zombies again, and I wanted to challenge myself with something, and I wanted to see how difficult that would be for me to actually complete this. So we started out the game like normal. We started out in stage 1. Stage 1, we are just in the front yard, and we just have one lane to deal with, and we only have the pea shooter. This is how the challenge starts, because this is actually how the game starts. You only have the pea shooter, and you have to pick up sun off the ground. This is basically the tutorial level. It's no big deal whatsoever. The second thing that you get is the sunflower, which I could not use during this, so we had to use the pea shooter on wave 2 as well, which went fine because you only have 3 lanes to deal with and no more. Our third unlock then came with the cherry bomb, and cherry bomb is a pretty good plant, at least when you can actually use it. Unfortunately, it costs 150 sun, and there really wasn't any time that I used the cherry bomb at all, so I was pretty much still just using the pea shooter. Next plant that we unlocked though is the walnut, and that one I could actually use. That one only costs 50, and I did use the walnut actually quite a bit throughout this playthrough. With 50, it's a nice little wall. You can put it up and you can put the pea shooters behind it, or whatever your shooter happens to be at that given time, and use that. So walnut and pea shooter became my first two kind of staples that I went with, and both of them served me pretty well throughout all of the day stages. After that, I got the potato mine, and the potato mine is where you get a lot of value. The potato mine only costs 25. It does take time to set up, and it also takes time to actually be able to plant another potato mine, but it does one-shot almost any zombie in the game, which is really useful, especially if you want to save sun early on, which I definitely did throughout this challenge. And then I pretty much was using potato mines whenever there was something scary, like the cone zombies or the bucket zombies. And then after that, I was just using the pea shooters and walnuts, same strategy as before. Nothing else really changed there. Next plant I got was the snow pea. This one cost 175, and it simply was too expensive for me to be using. Snow peas are also pretty great because they slow down the zombies, but I just couldn't afford them and just stuck with peas, so it was still pretty much peas, potatoes, and walnuts, and that's it. After that, I got the chomper, another expensive plant, 150. It can one-shot a lot of zombies, but it's just not worth the investment for what I was trying to do. I didn't use the chompers at all besides the mini games. After that, we got the repeater, another expensive plant, which was 200, and there's no way I could afford 200 because I was barely getting enough to actually plant my regular pea shooters, and they were providing much more value than a single repeater would, assuming I could even put it down. And that was everything for the day map. I actually didn't end up dying or losing on any of those stages, which was very nice. I didn't really expect that part to be that hard because I figured it was more tapered towards everybody actually just barely starting out this game. So that went about as expected. Same goes with the mini games. Mini games were no trouble whatsoever. We had the walnut bowling and then just the conveyor belt style game. I guess they're all conveyor belt style games. And then we moved on to the night maps, where we got the puff shroom, and the puff shroom was definitely the MVP of this run because the puff shroom costs 0, and 0 is extremely useful when you don't have any sun, especially at night when you only have 50 sun to start out with, and that's it. That I figured would make the night maps extremely difficult, and I wasn't entirely wrong at that. So we got the puff shroom, and the puff shroom I just spammed on every night map and used it to its full extent. These basically act the same way as the pea shooters do, just at limited range, so you do have to put them closer, but they have a very fast recharge rate, and again, they cost 0, so you can just spam them out, and even if they die, it doesn't really matter because you're not losing any resources in that. We could still use the 50 sun that we did have to either buy 1 walnut or 2 potato mines, depending on what sort of zombies actually showed up. So if we got the football players or we got the bucket heads, we at least had some options to deal with them. And then of course after this we are given the sun shroom, which we can't use. Sun shroom would cost 25, but it produces sun, and this is a sunless run, so no sun shrooms whatsoever. We then unlock the fume shroom, and the fume shroom is another really great plant. Unfortunately though, it costs 75. And 75 is just way too much for the night maps because you only get 50 and there's no way of getting more than that. So I couldn't use these at all, and my basic strategy was still puff shrooms, walnuts, and potato mines. Strategy really didn't change all that much besides switching out the peas for the puff shrooms, and that was it. After that we got the grave buster, another 75, so we couldn't use it. It would have been useful to have it, but we couldn't use it, so moving on. Hypno shroom is next, another 75 shroom, so again, can't use it. It would have been nice to get some footballers or some bucket heads with it, but no, that wasn't going to happen for us. After that, we got the Scaredy Shroom, and the Scaredy Shroom I actually did use a little bit. The Scaredy Shroom only costs 25, but you can put it down immediately, and that's mostly what I was doing. I was putting down as many puff shrooms as I could with 2 Scaredy Shrooms down, and that was really it, unless I wanted to save for that one particular walnut or save for those potatoes, which most of the time I really didn't need to. It wasn't really necessary. I found that the puff shrooms that I could just keep spamming out were good enough for clearing up pretty much everything, and the scaredy shrooms on top of that just made it a little bit easier for clearing out lanes. So that was pretty much my strategy for the entire night. After that, we got ice shrooms. Ice shrooms, another 75 cost plant, and we couldn't use it. So unfortunate. Ice shrooms would have also been nice, but no chance there. Doom shrooms were next. 125, definitely not using that one, but Doom shrooms are pretty awesome because they do clear up the whole map. So on the one mini game where I got to use them, I use them a lot. And then we moved on to the day maps again. So now we moved from the front yard to the backyard, and we are given the lily pads, which of course we have to take because it's kind of the only plant that we have to be putting other plants into the water, and that's sort of important. So now my full roster, I guess, from day to night back to day was the pea shooters, walnuts, potato mines, lily pads, and puff shrooms, and that was it. Puff shrooms I was still spamming because they could still be used as shields, even though they wouldn't be able to be awake because I didn't have the coffee bean, and we don't get that until much later into the game. It didn't really matter. We just kept spamming them in front, and they just worked as walls. Essentially, you could stack about 3 of them in a lane, I think, and that would take probably about 1 stage of a walnut, I'm guessing. I'm not sure exactly the amount of health there, but that is a lot of value that you could potentially get for 0 cost. So it was just put these in front, put walnuts potentially there if we need them, put potato mines if we need them, and then just put the lily pads and the pea shooters in the back, and they're going to be doing the hard work. At least the pea shooters. The pea shooters are going to be pretty much doing all the work at this point. After this, though, we did get another high value plant, and that was the squash. Squash costs 50, but it is another plant that can almost one-shot anything in the game, which is very useful. It can actually one-shot multiple. It's similar to the potato mine if multiple things land on it at the same time. This way you can just put it down and it will crush whatever's in front of it, or sometimes behind it. Sometimes the pathing of the squash is weird. And up to this point, again, I still hadn't lost any stages. I actually managed to go through the night stage up to the pool stage without losing any levels either, which was pretty nice. So this whole challenge seemed a lot more doable. Next plant I got was the 3-peater. 3-peater cost 325, which there's no way I'm buying, even for the value of potentially holding 3 lanes with just 1 plant. It costs way too much. Even if I saved up for the entire match, I would probably only have been able to buy 1 or 2 of them, and that just wasn't worth it. It was just better to spam more pea shrooms. So build still didn't change, other than, like I said, the squash did get added to the roster of the plants I had. And I believe at this part I did cave in and buy the 7th seed slot from Dave because I had 6. I really didn't need 7, but once I got squash, there was a reason to take 7, so I did buy that. After that, we got Tango Kelp. This was another addition. Sometimes I would switch this out for the walnut. Sometimes I'd switch it out for the squash. Kind of just depended. I usually kept the potato mine just because of the high value that it gave me, only costing 1 sun for me to put down something that would one-shot anything, or at least anything that was realistically going to show up on these maps. Tango Kelp also worked great for taking out the scuba divers or the snorkelers and the dolphins too. Very useful, and I used it all throughout stage 3. Then we got the jalapeno, another pretty good plant, 125, so it is on the expensive side. I didn't use it at all during any of the stages. There wasn't really a reason to. Yes, it can kill the zombonis, but I just used the squash instead. The squash can also one-shot them, and that was good enough. I think the potato mines can too, but you have to place them at the front, which is a little bit iffy because other things might eat them, or they might go off on just killing a regular guy. So the squash is a lot more reliable for getting rid of those, and that's mostly what I used. Then we got the spikeweeds. I tried out the spikeweeds for a little bit, and I thought that they would get me a lot more value than they did, because I assumed that the zombies would take multiple hits going over them, and they do, but it was only 3 to 4 hits, it seems like. That wasn't enough to really kill him, and it didn't really outvalue what a pea shooter could do, just being put further back, just hitting them multiple times. Once I put them in combination, yeah, it was okay, but it probably wasn't as good as just stacking more pea shooters in the back and just clearing up the lanes that way, so I ditched them after a little while, but they were kind of fun to use for a little bit. They only cost 100, so same cost as a pea shooter, and that's kind of what I was hoping to get out of them, but not really. I did use them a little bit later on too, when there was multiple zambonis, but I had 2 lines of pea shooters, I believe, on those longer maps, the ones that have 3 stages, and then I put the spikeweeds at the front, and I think I just had like 1 set of spikeweeds in each of the lane, and that was pretty much all of my budget that I had to use. Everything else was just taken up by more of the puff shrooms, which were still the MVP because they were still working really good as a wall. Then we got Torchwood. Torchwood was 175 to enhance the pea shooters. way too much for what my budget allowed, so we weren't going to be using the Torchwood whatsoever. Then we got Tall Nuts. Tall Nuts I decided to try to take, I think in 1 or 2 of the matches, but never used them. They were not as useful as the Walnuts. The Walnuts were just at a lower cost, and I just never really got to the 125 to pick that or something like a pea shooter. So after we completed this, we completed all of the mini games, and again, there was still no losses. We didn't lose any of the matches whatsoever. We were still doing really, really well. And then we moved on to stage 4, which was the backyard at night, which we got the sea shrooms for. And the sea shrooms were another really high value unit because they cost 0. You could only plant them in the pool, but that didn't really matter. They were essentially more puff shrooms that I could just spam out, which was going to be really, really useful for the night. And the first stage went extremely well. We just spammed puff shrooms, we put in the sea shrooms, and then I think I carried like the walnut, the potato mines, tangle kelp, and squash, depending on what I wanted to use, if I needed to use any of them. I don't think I actually needed to use any of them for the first stage. I think that one was pretty chill, so we got through that no problem. Then we got the Plantern. This was the lantern that lets you see further in the fog. This one cost 25, and that 25 is just not worth it for just being able to see a little bit further when I can just spam more puff shrooms in there. And that's all I did. There wasn't really a reason to take the lantern at any point, and I wasn't going to pick it over something like the potato mine or the tangle kelp for the same price. So lantern never got used. Then we got the cactus, and this is where things got kind of crazy. Not on this stage, but this is when the balloon boys were added. The problem with balloon boys and the problem with the cactus is that the cactus costs 125. You cannot get 125 in this run at night. You only have 50, that's all you have. So you don't have any defenses against the flying balloon zombies. That became an issue because they will go to the end of your lane, and if there's multiple that go to the end of your lane, the first one's okay because either your mowers or your pool cleaners will take care of them. But then after that, you have no more defenses because, again, you have nothing that can stop them. There's only a handful of things in the game that can. The cactus is one, the cattail is another, but the cattail you have to buy from Crazy Dave, and it costs an insane amount of sun. I think it costs 225, I want to say. It's a super strong unit, but when you can't make any sun, it's of no use. And then the last one is the blower, which is 100 sun, which you also can't use. That became a problem once we hit stage 4. I got the blower, and we had no defenses against the balloon zombies. This caused my first loss. This actually caused my first 6 or 7 losses during this stream because I had nothing to defend against them. I literally could not buy anything. The main problem with this, or the more annoying problem with this, is that they usually didn't even throw the balloon zombies at us right away. They would wait and throw them in the middle and then at the end. So I wouldn't even know until probably the last 3 quarters to the end stage that I was even going to lose, which was even more annoying because I had to restart. So essentially I had to play through stage 4 for something like 6 or 7 times in total and just wait until the end. I actually did lose one other time that was actually not related to the balloon zombies at all. It was related to the dolphin zombie. One of them actually got through, and that was the end. I think a balloon zombie actually came through that lane first, or maybe it was a second zombie dolphin that came through. I'm not entirely sure about that. I don't remember fully, but they came through and I lost from that as well. That was actually a little bit of a faster loss than the balloon zombies usually were. On average, it seemed like I was getting between 4 and 6 balloon zombies, which was a big problem because you only have 6 lanes. So either I had to get perfect RNG and get all 6 in all separate lanes, or I had to get less than 6 and also in separate lanes. Luckily, when I finally beat this, we got only 4 and they were in separate lanes, and that was how we won and were able to progress past that. This stage gave me the most trouble out of any of them, and I think it's because they gave you both the cactus and the blower, so they were expecting you to be using these more frequently, so they upped the spawns of the balloon zombies. And this is also when chat was kind of telling me that the spawn rates in Plants vs. Zombies are very odd. It's a lot of RNG as to when they spawn, what they spawn, and how often they'll spawn certain things. And in that particular stage, it was all on RNG. So this was by far the most difficult stage of the run, just because I had no control over when to do really anything. After that, though, we got the Split Peas, and the Split Peas introduces yet another new zombie. The new zombie being the Miner, which some people thought would be a real issue. I didn't think it would be too bad, mostly because the zombie goes to the end of your lane, starts attacking, and goes through the back and moves very slow. And by that time, even if he's eaten 1 or 2 of your puff shrooms, doesn't really matter because you can just replace them super fast. You could also do the other trick, which I tried a couple of times, to put 2 potato mines in the back and then just hope that the miners hit those 2, because you can't really react ahead of time. By the time you plant the potatoes and you hear the miners, even if you could see the miners, which we couldn't because of the fog, it really didn't matter. They would be able to eat the potatoes before they were able to pop up, I believe. Could be wrong about that. If you could actually see, maybe that would be a decent strategy, but we couldn't. And the split peas we couldn't use either. They were 125, and there just wasn't really a place to use them. After that, though, we got starfruit, which starfruit is a very high value plant, at least if you use it correctly. Problem was, we still couldn't use it on the night map. I believe we were still on the night map up to this point. Starfruit cost 125, so there was no chance of using it there. Then we got the pumpkin. Pumpkin is also another great plant. You can put it up as a shield, but it costs 125, so again, not using it at night. And then I think on this stage, 4-8, where we got the pumpkin, I think it was 4-8. It was either 4-8 or 4-9. We suffered another loss. This was, again, more balloons, where we got bad RNG as well. This was actually only, I think, 3 balloons that showed up total. It was just 2 that showed up in the exact same lane. So we didn't have to retry that one. But the next time, I think we only got 2 balloons, and they showed up in 2 different lanes. So the rest of the run was fine. Again, same strategy. Spam the puff shrooms, spam the sea shrooms, and then just throw down potato mines or squash or tangle kelp whenever there was anything that was kind of big and scary showing up. Then got our last shroom, which was the magnet shroom. The magnet shroom, again, cost 100, so we couldn't use it, which was kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. Then that wrapped up the night stages, which meant we got to move on to the final stage, the 5th and final stage, which is on the roof, which we got the cabbage pulp. And this is where I was really concerned about how well this strategy would work, because essentially we needed to do the same thing we did in stages 1 and 3, but now it was more difficult because you also had to put down plants and manage the pots on the roof. That was a little bit more difficult. So now my strategy was once again using the puff shrooms because they just made awesome shields. Again, I didn't even wake them up with the coffee bean. We still didn't have it at this point, but we were getting it fairly soon. Put the cabbage pulps down as much as we could in the background and just have them attack. And then still use things like potato mines, squash, and walnuts to kind of get some value out of them. We then got the flower pot, which also made this a little bit easier and more difficult because now we had more resources to manage and we needed to have them. So roster changed a little bit again, and we still had the flower pot. The flower pots actually gave me some trouble because it was difficult to decide if I really wanted to buy another plant pot and put it down so I could move the line essentially a little bit forward. Right away, this wasn't a huge deal because every once in a while I'd do that and then we just stick like a puff shroom on there, either as a placeholder or just, again, as a wall so that we had 2 things that the zombies had to eat through, and then just spam with the cabbage pulps. That worked just fine. We then got the kernel pult, so we got the corn, and this one really helped out. The corn is a great unit. This one cost 100 as well, just like the cabbage pult. I'm not sure if I said that before, but it's the same cost. Slightly less damage than it on average, or at least regular shots, but the kernel pult has the special ability of being able to throw the butter chunk, and if it throws the butter chunk out and hits something, then it stuns it. Usually. Not everything gets stunned by the butter chunk like the pogo zombies don't. That became a problem later on, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Up to this point, though, we just pretty much had cabbage and corn, and it worked just fine. Just like the normal roof maps, just we had a lot less units overall, and again, we were just spamming puff shrooms at the front to body block as much as possible. This made the first 3 stages very easy. The 4th stage, we've got the coffee bean, which I had tried using a little bit, and honestly, I think this is where we got another loss, because I was trying to get the most value out of them and just trying to throw these down on the puff shrooms, which did a pretty good job until we got the ladder zombies. Once we got the ladder zombies, that was an issue because their ladder would block the puff shrooms and we got nowhere near the value, in which case then the cabbage pults or the kernel pults would have gotten so much more because they can just ignore it. Then I kind of had to change my strategy around, and I didn't really use the coffee bean that much after that because it just wasn't really worth the value. Next up, we got garlic, and garlic was great. Garlic was a fantastic addition to this because now I could place garlic at the front of my line, up at the very top of the roof, and funnel the zombies into just 3 columns. I put them on the edges, so the top and bottom, and 1 in the middle. This made it so all zombies moving in to either the far sides or the center had to move onto those sort of middle columns right there, so I could just build up the middle column a bit more, and I could put things behind the garlic. this is where I put the star fruit, which got us a whole lot of value because the star fruit were dealing a lot of damage. And then I just put 2 things of corn towards the back. Everything else was just puff shrooms to take their place. This really helped once we got to the catapult zombies as well, because then the catapults had to hit the puff shrooms, which made it so they had to last a bit longer. I also made sure to move the garlic a step back so that it didn't get run over by these guys just coming into the map. And then the star fruit was able just to take care of them, as well as take care of all the other zombies that were coming. Occasionally, I still had to put up like a regular pot and put a squash or put a potato mine in there if we had like a bucket head or something. But those instances were kind of few and far between. Then we got the umbrella leaf. Umbrella leaf would stop the bungee zombies, which actually weren't a huge deal. Sometimes they were a bit annoying and would steal like my kernel pults or my star fruit every once in a while. But usually they would just end up targeting a blank pot, or I guess what would be a blank pot, where I just put puff shrooms. So I didn't lose anything when they showed up, which wasn't a huge deal. I didn't use the umbrella leaf whatsoever to keep them away because it cost 100 and it just wasn't worth the investment. It was probably better to just hope that they don't hit one of my valuable targets. We got the marigold after that, which cost 50, but it only gets us gold, and this was a challenge run and it was already challenging enough, so I chose not to use that one. And then we moved on to the final stage where we got the melon pult, at least the final normal stage. This, and a few stages ago, I believe, is when the gargantuan started showing up. The big guys with the club and with the imp on the back of them. And these guys I really didn't know how we were going to deal with. Turns out the first time we got them wasn't too bad. The way that we did end up dealing with these guys was simply put a potato mine down first. When they come down to squash the potato mine, they hit it, it blows up, deals a lot of damage to them, but not enough damage to where the imp will be thrown out of it, which is very useful. We can then put down another plant or another plant pot immediately, put down the squash on it, and then have it attack, and that would crush both of them so that they wouldn't be able to attack anymore. And that's how we dealt with them. Luckily, we never got 2 at a time to where this strategy didn't work. I think we only got 2 the entire run of this, which one was on the last board and one was on the first board that they can show up on. And both times the strategy worked. Maybe we got another one at one point, but I think at that point we had so many star fruit that it didn't really matter. It just killed the gargantuan right away. And then the kernel pults just killed the imp when he got off, or maybe it was one of the roof cleaners. Speaking about buying items from Dave, I should say this, we did buy a couple items from Dave. First ones were always the pool cleaners or the roof cleaner. I made sure to make that a priority because they were far more useful than the lawnmowers, since they would go over the entire lane and kill whatever was there. So pretty much if I got to the end stage, it was a guaranteed win. I also bought the rake multiple times because people had suggested that the rake was good for saving sun, and yeah, it was. It was a pretty good investment. It only cost 200 to 300. It wasn't a whole lot, and this made it so for the next 3 stages, the rake was always in the place of where the first zombie showed up, which made it easier because I likely wasn't planting stuff in that lane, just because the odds of 2 things coming down the same lane, one right after another, seemed to be a little bit less than if they showed up in the other lanes. So I got a guaranteed kill right away, and I didn't have to worry about that first zombie getting to any of my valuable stuff, and we could just move on from there. I don't know if it was entirely necessary though. I don't feel like it really helped a whole ton, and some of the times where I got the rake, it was just on the mini games, which made it so I used up my rake more and we didn't really need it during the mini games. We then moved on to the final boss fight, which was just a conveyor belt thing, and we could just use everything that we had there, and that went quite well. We just gotta plant everything and just keep attacking the boss until we eventually won. And that was how my Sunless run went with Plants vs. Zombies. It was actually not too bad. I believe in total on this run, I lost a total of 11 times, I want to say. Most of them were on stage 4-4. That was just because of the RNG. I lost, I believe, 2 to 3 times on the roof, and I lost 1 other time in the night during the fog map. So I lost between either 11 or 12 times, I think, somewhere around there. This challenge was a lot of fun. It was really fun to stream. There will be links in the description of this video if you would like to go off and see the whole stream, how it played out live. I plan on putting that under the whole playlist, as well as we are starting another Plants vs. Zombies challenge right now. I did this following this one, which was a mushroom only run. So we're doing this on New Game Plus, and we're only allowed to use mushrooms. We've just barely got through the day maps, and that's been rough. I'm going to make a whole video about this once we actually complete this, or at least get as far as we can. I'm not sure how well this will actually work once we get to, like, the roof. That's the stage where I'm really not sure how things are going to go. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to do. I plan on doing potentially a couple tier lists on Plants vs. Zombies too. One for the Sunless run and one for an updated one, because I did do one couple years ago when I first played through this game for a charity stream. It might be another fun idea to do later. Special thanks to the supporters of this channel. These are my members over here on YouTube and my patrons over on Patreon. They get early access to videos just like this, and if you'd like to be a part of that, you can. There are links down in the description. If you guys are new here, be sure that you subscribe. That way you get notifications whenever I post these type of videos. And if you'd like to see more Plants vs. Zombies challenges or my other challenge runs, be sure to click over here on this video right now. That'll take you to a full playlist. Thanks, and bye-bye!